held in person in the school committee room. Members of the public are welcome to attend this in-person meeting. Please note that while an option for remote attendance is being provided as a courtesy, the meeting will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast, unless otherwise required by law. Members of the public with particular interest in any specific item on this agenda should make plans for in-person versus virtual attendance accordingly. The meeting number is 2331-860-5550, and the password is Burlington with a capital B. Our first item of business is the approval of the May 21st meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Mrs. Bond. Any
Yes.
discussion? Sorry.
No.
Okay. Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Monaco,
Aye.
Ms. Nevoychuk,
Yes.
Mr. Brooks,
Aye.
Dr. Conti,
Yes.
Ms. Kasha, Mr. Cuna,
Yes.
Mr. Sagarino,
Abstain.
Mr. Denizio.
Yes.
I didn't get David, right? No, okay. Mr. Villano? Yes. Mrs. Priest?
Aye.
And I am I. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1101. All right. The next item on here is public comment. We have one gentleman in the room. Can you just do us a favor and state your name and make sure the green light is on there?
Okay. All right. Put me to work. My name is Bob Young, and I live at 3 Valley Circle. And I'm here because I'm an interested citizen in this potential proposal. Not potential, it is a proposal. And well over a month ago, probably a month and a half, almost 2 months ago, I was online at a particular organizational meeting of this group, or a subcommittee of the group. And the topic of getting the word out to the citizens of Burlington came up. And so I'm wondering, it's been a month and a half, other than probably the two standard, I don't know, maybe it's going to be at the high school here. And I know Christine Monaco specifically mentioned how important it is to get the public involved if you can. So I'm wondering if, I'll start with Ms. Monaco, do you have any ideas other than the standard ways, the official meetings, if you come up with any other ideas, creative ideas to get the word out?
Are you sure it was this committee?
Absolutely.
It was the Fox Hill Building Committee?
Absolutely.
Okay, because we have the high school one going on too.
No.
Well, I think Mrs. Masato, who's the chair of this building committee, has a plan in place, and she's got great ideas on how to get this out.
I'm sure you're going to mention, we have an actual community meeting next week for informing people. And then, of course, I'm sure you want more verbal participation, but there's certainly ways to participate online. But I'm going to go ahead and let the chair take over, because...
Sure, we have the robocall, so the reverse 911, and if you sign up for town, if you get alerts for trash, delays, all that stuff. So it's coming out via all those methods. So it's email, text, phone call. It's been posted at the library for at least a week now. I'm open to suggestions. I believe it goes in the Senior Center newsletter. It's posted on the town website, so definitely all ears if anyone has suggestions. But I think the robocall is probably the most important one that will reach the most number of people. Bob you knew some sort of number, right? How many? 15,000 or something like that it reaches?
Yeah, generally it's about 15,000, and there's different methods. So one being phone call, one being prompted cast, where it can be translated TTY, and also goes through text message as well too. So that system's code read through the town. Also, we'll be sending it out through Parent Square as well for anyone who signs up for school notifications.
So did I understand that one robocall or text or all these different methods has it started? Has there already been one effort to get the message out?
It's going to be 2. Oh, go ahead, Eric.
No, we had a communications subcommittee that is part of this group, and we discussed not doing it too far in advance and not too close. So what we decided was Wednesday, which is, the meeting is a week from this Wednesday. So the first messages are going to go out tomorrow, and then we're going to do a reminder on Monday. So we're going to send out 2 messages to all town residents who have signed up for the town call, again, Wednesday night and on Monday.
Okay. Thank you. Is it, before I give my additional comments, is there anybody else on this committee that has any other ideas other than what the chairman just mentioned?
Are you asking for frequency or for just how we're communicating it?
No, I'm
Okay.
asking you, beyond the standard couple of community meetings, is there anything else? Because it came up a month and a half ago. And again, I'll say, Ms. Monaco, I haven't been to any high school meetings, have not. So, and I've been to several of these, so it was definitely this. And we could go back and listen to the tape, and I know what I heard. Anyway, is there anybody else on this committee,
Yeah.
other than the standard community meetings, that they have any other creative ideas on how to get the message out? That's my question.
I think the answer is no. We had,
Okay.
Ms. Novichok reminded me, we're also at town meeting. Roger, you have a comment, or are you good?
I was just going to point out that at town meeting, there was both a presentation, which was broadcast as part of town meeting,
Okay?
and there was a flyer, or a 2-page pamphlet that discussed it, and all the town meeting members should be well informed by this point about what's going on with the project.
Okay.
So,
Uh,
yeah.
So, let me get to the point. And I've been in town now 13 years. My wife and I were homeowners and an active citizen. And I happened to take some of my time, and I went over to, I believe it's the Francis Wyman School. There was a carnival over there on Saturday, if I'm not mistaken. And I was really impressed with the energy over there. I mean, the parking lot was over capacity. A lot of people having a lot of fun. I don't know, I think it's been going on for quite a few years, but they seem to have a very organized program. There was a lot of auction items, and there were people, I mean, it was really actually a parking problem, and I was part of that. So, the reason why I'm bringing it up is there were lots of Burlington people there, you know, with school children. Unless I'm missing something, I would have thought that that would have been a golden opportunity for this town and for this group to have some people over there and do some outreach.
Thank you. We'll take that under advisement.
No instant feedback on the thought from anybody?
Sure.
Through the chair. So I was at the Francis Wyman Carnival as well, and I have to say that as a parent, it would be really difficult for me to stop and have a conversation with someone about an in-depth topic like Fox Hill. I think that it's suited best for a different atmosphere. I understand that there were a lot of people there, and it would be a great time to, connect with multiple people, but my kids wanted to play games, and they wanted to run around, and they wanted to see their friends, and it would just be a hard time for families and caregivers to be able to digest that sort of information.
Well,
Thank you.
Again, and Mr. Young, we meet regularly. The PTO is the group that organized those meetings and communicate. And there was a joint PTO meeting last night where we discussed getting the word out about the public meeting a week from tomorrow night, and also helping us get the messages out. So I think if they're effective at bringing as many people into the carnival, then we can take advantage of their communication lines for other messages we need to get out. So again, Ms. Massardo was in attendance, and that meeting occurred last night and had representatives from, I believe, all four elementary schools. So hopefully we can get a carnival-like turnout for future events using their networks.
Well, I hope that'll be the case.
Just one parting thought, too. So we're a little over a year and change into the really design of this building, Mr. Young. The district has purchased Thought Exchange software to allow for more communication and let citizens provide their feedback. It helped drive the decision on which school building we were moving towards. The community spoke out pretty clearly that they wanted 4 separate schools, and that's why we moved the direction we did. So there has been a lot of proactive steps being done. There's been several community outreach engagements. Some were really well attended, others not. And, this body has made a pretty good attempt to try and publicize to the greatest extent possible we can. I've been pretty active on my social media, both through my school committee page and then my own personal page, reposting as we do stuff and trying to leverage personal networks as well. So, yeah, if there is other avenues you would like to suggest, I'm happy to hear it and action on it as well. Thanks.
I'm afraid we have to move on at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, and I hope we'll all find other ways other than the community meetings, and it's obviously one of the most important questions facing the town. So thank you all for your time.
Mhm. All right, I saw the presentation up there. Is it on? Okay.
Okay, so I guess I'll kick us off. Continuing the discussion or introduction last time on how the next few steps are going to happen in terms of cost estimating, total project budget. Reporting back on the cost estimating process, as mentioned, we received 2 independent cost estimates, and we met last week to reconcile those. So we're pleased to at least provide those in the backup folder for those that are curious. We're going to be into the weeds a little bit on numbers, so I'm either going to excite some people, really bore others, and potentially confuse a few folks as well. So there's really no script. We'll do the best we can to at least explain the process, where we are, where we came from, and hopefully where we're going into design development, should we be fortunate to get the project approved for the next phases. But before we get into the weeds, I do want to just say the news is good, right? Especially considering where the construction market and public bidding market in Massachusetts has been for the past 3 years. Things are still somehow going up at an alarming rate, but at least that rate has stabilized and is somewhat predictable. So fortunately, where we were at the end of PSR when we selected the one option based on some comparable costs of 3A to 3D, at that phase, things have been stable, and so we don't come here with any bad news that there's been a tremendous amount of unknowns that have really come back to bite us. Some measures of being conservative has helped us, and so at the end of the day, we are on budget or very closely on budget, depending on which level of being conservative you want to take, and it's really about that path. And because we're a committee, folks might feel a little bit different about each of the paths, and so I think bringing it full circle, we need to, at the end of this process, come to an agreement on the project budget, what's included in terms of construction costs and overall project budget as part of that submission to the MSBA for schematic design. But there's a few different ways we can get there. And the first step is kind of agreeing or having a discussion about tolerance for risk. We did mention that we received 2 separate cost estimates, and sometimes and in this case, Danisco is comfortable with where their estimator, albeit an independent estimate, the estimator that they carried, AMF, they're comfortable carrying their cost directly. And having gone through the numbers, Our more common approach, or another recommended approach, is to take a blended amount, or a combination of those two estimates. And because the cost estimate, or the construction number, is the biggest driver of the bottom line, so to speak, it deserves to have some attention called to it and to have a discussion around it. So what we have, and it's a little small for my eyes, but on screen is a slide that hopefully just summarizes where we were at the end of PSR on the left-hand side of the screen.
Can we just review again the initial? So the PSR is what we've already submitted. We submitted previously this 99,999,000. That was the number we gave at the PSR. That's what we're saying.
Correct.
And then the new, and I understand there's a difference with a diesel and a gas generator, but then the second column is one of the two estimators, and the third column is the two estimators blended together. And you just said, I want to make sure I know what you just said, that the Danisco was willing to carry the AMF estimate. So did I hear you correctly, and what does that mean?
Yeah, and I don't want to speak for them, so I'll let them kind of say that in their own words. But just getting more direct to your question, that is correct. So on the left-hand side, the PSR is the preferred schematic report. That's kind of the culmination of the effort, where we had 9 different options, and we've honed those down to one single option, which was 3D at the time, which was a 2-story Fox Hill only school, 91,000 square feet located in the northern part of the site. And at the time, that was, the estimates were for comparative purposes, and we do the best we can to build in opportunities for flexibility, so that when we get to this point further down the line, we're doing the responsible thing. So that's correct. At the end of PSR, at the end of the calendar year, we were at $99,999,707 as the total project budget. So that's what this chart represents, is that in the one scenario, and again, it's just highlighting the gas generator option, but the 2 columns on the right-hand side of the page, the leftmost with the title AM Fogarty estimate, that was Danisco's estimator, and on the right was a blended estimate, which was taking the estimate of AM Fogarty and PM&C, which was our independent cost estimator, and blending the two. And it's an approach that we've used, other folks have used in the past. And I will be quite upfront, there's other projects that have carried just the designer's estimate, but we are still 50% through the design process, and that's not any one person's decision to make, and it's all about that path I started to describe that's available to you, depending on risk tolerance. I think you could make the argument that being too conservative top to bottom might also be a little irresponsible, because there's so much built in that might not ever come to fruition. And at the end of the day, you might reach an amount that might be a little harder to support based on the numbers that we've published so far at town meeting and these meetings since the end of last year. So I will pause there. Vivian, I know Donna's online. If you want to provide some thoughts to that process and where we stand at the end of the cost estimating process so far.
Sure. I don't know if everyone.
Yep, you're good.
Okay, thank you. Sorry I can't be there in person. Child surgery this morning. So, yeah, everything that Steve just said, is we're 100% in agreement. I think, just kind of as a little more context, the preferred schematic report really is the direction of the preferred solution for the Fox Hill School, right? So we hadn't gotten into the level of detail at that point, because we assume a certain basis of design, what are the materials, generality, what are the site amenities, things like that. But we really didn't start designing the school or the project until we got into schematic design. We've put an enormous amount of effort. Hopefully that has shown through all of our renderings and discussions and conversations with the school department and the Park and Rec, and have really identified an enormous amount of scope which at this point in the project is advanced for what would typically be considered schematic design. So we feel that we have identified far more than what is typical at this level, and that we're comfortable with A.M. Fogarty, who has been our cost estimator for, I think, 25 years, close to it, if not. And he knows our buildings, he knows the level of design, the detail, et cetera. And so we're very comfortable utilizing A.M. Fogarty's, and PM&C is great too. They're 1.5% difference. We would never expect them to be exact, because then some people may even question what's the point, right? Great lively discussion, had them both look at things differently, had them both sharpen their pencils, and we're thrilled with the outcome, whether it's utilizing A.M. Fogarty's or even the blended. I think bottom line for the building committee is whatever number we select and we bring forward to MSBA, that's the maximum number that they will participate in, even though they don't fully reimburse for all of it. So maybe going with a slightly higher number might be in your best interest rather than going with a lower number. But, you know, we're 99.999 versus 99.3 or 1 million, right? So from going from PSR to where we are today, we're exactly where we want to be. So I don't know if that helps. I think we have more to share with this. We can maybe go to the next slide or pause here. If you have any questions, you can see that the construction cost is pretty much right on. There's a slight differences, slight nuances, and this is a number that we will design to regardless of taking A.M. Fogarty's number or the blended number going forward. And our goal, and we want to share with you tonight, are even some other decisions that are we don't have to remove them or include them in the project, but these are value management decisions that we all want to have a conversation with you all about before we submit a final number to MSBA.
Thanks. Maybe this is before we move too far from the actual estimating process, maybe during the reconciliation, Bob, you sat in on what that process was like. You kind of heard firsthand. It was probably 8 or 9 hours worth of straight, you know, digging through Excel and talking about what goes into it. So I don't know if you offer any kind of firsthand accounts of the process, if you learned anything or could shed some light on.
Through the chair. So I think at our last meeting, I explained to you know, some of you all that as long and tedious as the process was, I actually found it pretty awesome, right? At least in my line of work, you know, hearing 2 different companies looking at the same project and even coming with, you know, 10 different feet or $5 difference in pricing, right? And where did we get to that? You know, the fact that there's so many moving parts and so many hundreds of thousands of pieces to this design, and to be within 1% from 2 different companies. I get quotes all the time, and companies don't come back at 1% difference. I mean, I get quotes that are thousands apart on a $1,000 job. So, you know, on a $100 million job to be this close, I really find that truly, you know, amazing and a great effort from both teams. Again, long process. You know, it's probably one of those things that happens in the background and we don't realize. But I truly will say that a lot of effort went into it, and at no time did I feel as though costs were cut to, you know, compromise the built-in design or let's remove this part to save $5. So I really think that just sitting in and hearing that and hearing the experience was worthwhile for me. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Steve, do you just want to clarify? I think is it your next slide, the just difference with the diesel generator and?
Yeah, and maybe before we, again, the last pause before we kind of dig into the next slide and talk about comparisons, there were some differences between where we were at PSR. Again, it was a much different approach to the estimate based on very little design, based on cost per square foot, just trying to get, again, build in some level of being conservative but responsible, but being as accurate as possible. But of course, the closer we get to bid date, the closer the design comes along, the more detailed the drawings get, the fewer unknowns, and the less the more confident we are with the number. One of the biggest differences was the cost for the site construction. We've been fortunate to get some more information based on the soils, their capacity to bear the building, what that translates into a structural design, replacing literally bad dirt to support a good foundation. Considering the size, just the sheer size and square footage and cubic footage of the site, that was maybe the single biggest increase from PSR, to the tune of about $4 million. I mean, it's pretty substantial. At the same time, some assumptions we made in the building benefited us on the other direction, to the tune of about a $3 million savings in the other direction. But it's still roughly a net $1 million add from the PSR just in terms of construction, just from those two line items, just to try to make it as simple as possible. So I think, we did the responsible thing at PSR and kept it conservative, knowing that there was many, many unknowns, and some of those have become a little more clear. So at the end of the day, the construction cost really hasn't moved a ton. And again, we're going to get into the different permutations and assumptions, but we're fortunate that really hasn't moved a lot, and the bottom line to the total project budget, as a result, hasn't moved a lot either. So the difference between the two slides, one that's on the screen and the next, is in the base estimate, the design team and the estimators are carrying a natural gas generator. Yep, we can go to the next. So the only difference here is just showing the difference between, at PSR, we were carrying a diesel generator, and we'd still like to be able to pursue that at the end of the day, because the cost savings, not only in the direct construction cost to do that of about $200,000 versus a natural gas generator, but also the incentives coming back from Mass Save, which is estimated about $1.4 million. So we don't want to be irresponsible and say we're counting on that, because there's a very big assumption that we can get the zoning amendment or some other alternative to allow diesel on the site to happen, something that we've talked about quite a bit. But there's still too much that needs to happen to bank on that. And so we've modeled a couple of different options, again, from taking one estimate and a blended approach to give you what that range is, and then carrying a diesel versus gas generator, because that cost savings on the direct cost and the incentives from Mass Save are very, very significant. So the first couple of slides just show, from a sheer construction cost estimate and project cost, what that does to affect the bottom line. Again, at PSR, we're just under 100 million. If that assumption can remain true, and we don't have to be a little pessimistic and think we can't get there and have to assume natural gas, the number goes up. And that was what was on the previous slide. But if we're making the same assumptions today as we did back then, and we think we can get there, we're a little better than where we were on the construction cost and total project cost, where we sit today. Anything further to add? I think the next couple of slides just show the trickle down on what the incentives, what the bottom line in town responsibility is, based on some assumptions and cost modeling of the budgets and the assumptions from MSBA policies. So I know what was shared at town meeting through Ways and Means was an average taxpayer impact, annual taxpayer impact, based on a number at PSR. And so we don't want to sit here today, because the numbers are so fresh, and tell you what that is. Again, we're here tonight to introduce the process so far, where we hope to go in the next couple of weeks, but we still have some time, based on the assumptions that are in front of you, and then some value engineering and management options that are on the table, to get folks' opinion on how we, as we mentioned, taking those couple of different paths, or what's available to you, where we might go from here. So if you could scroll to the next slide. This is, again, just trying to summarize the options between gas and a diesel generator, assuming both paths with AMF or a blended approach, and then the trickle down from project cost. We've run full 3011s, which is the 100 to 150 line budget with the MSBA, applied their policies. That's not, quote, best and final until we get to the project scope and budget agreement, but it's our best guess today. And again, much like the earlier slides, on the far left is the PSR summary, and we estimated at that time about a $66.9 million local share after the MSBA grant. We then applied what we thought a reasonable estimate for the IRA and Mass Save incentives at 5.4. And so some of those numbers that were generated from Ways and Means to estimate the local annual taxpayer impact were based on those numbers, and that was based on that 61.485 number. And so as you scan across the page from the next column to the right, to the far right of the page, you can kind of gauge and get a quick glimpse of how each of these different permutations have impacted that bottom line number. And at the most, it's the blended approach with the natural gas generator at 62.8, which is an increase of about 400,000. And if we were taking the most, the lowest or rosiest outlook, I guess you could say, we're looking at 60.5, which is a decrease to the bottom line. So depending on, risk tolerance and some other factors and what's in the budget, it's, hopefully we didn't bury the headline and say that we are truly in good shape, but we hope this kind of reinforces that statement that you have multiple options in front of us, and that even if we're being very conservative, it really hasn't moved the needle much at all. And depending on how the conversation goes tonight, what options are on the table for VE, whether that goes up or down, we fully expect to hopefully engage Ways and Means and have an updated number to report to you in the future as soon as next meeting. So I've done a lot of the talking, and I'll pause there and let you chime in, fill in some gaps, or answer any questions so far.
Can I see the online? Ms. Priest.
Is the diesel amendment piece on like the docket for its town meeting in September? Is that what we're holding off on?
We're working.
or-
We're figuring out how it needs to proceed, but yes.
Okay.
Mr. Brooks.
Just to answer Ms. Priest's question a little more thoroughly, Planning Board has asked, once we presented these numbers, that we start attending their meetings and start working down the path to get that done as well. So this is all in the works.
No hands online, right? Okay. Okay. Oh, sure, Roger.
So it's really nice to hear that the numbers don't have a very big range. As Bob pointed out, though, 1%, 1.5% difference between them. To me, the difference between the options is small enough that you can't disregard it, but it doesn't, to me, it doesn't really impact the choice of what you want to do. And so, yes, Ways and Means, we'll look through the numbers again and revise the impact. I think it's so close that it's probably going to be the same average homeowner impact as it was before, within a very small delta. So I'm not concerned that we're changing the story in any way in terms of the scale of the commitment by the town.
Based on the differences of the bottom line, it seemed like that was going to be the case, but that shouldn't come from me. And we fully understand that. So based on the next part of the discussion on what's on the table in terms of value management, I think we'll have a better idea on if that number is moving. It might not, or it may in one direction or the other, but depending on how that conversation goes, we'll include that in the model to give you accurate numbers to update, so we can show how that impacts from the previously shared numbers. Next slide. Yep. Great. Your turn.
So I think it would be great for us to talk a little bit about what is definitely in the scope. That's what we're presenting as the estimate, and what we pulled out as something that we can add in. So at one of our earlier meetings, we discussed the canopy. We had two different options for the canopy. One was the fairly long canopy, and one was a smaller one, but still extended out from the main entrance. So the smaller one is currently in the base scope. So in front of you, this a lot of words, very small. I don't know if you need to zoom in. I can kind of go through the categories and some of the main points, but what we'd like you to know is that there is a canopy on this building as part of this latest cost estimate. What we actually had to pull out that would be considered an add to the project is the rainwater harvesting system. That ended up being quite a fairly large number. It was over $700,000. So had it been, it was originally part of the base scope, and when we went to reconcile, we were looking at, you know, how did the numbers change so much? The site was one of them, understanding the site and knowing now that we can't reuse a lot of the soil on site because of the quality of it. That raised the site costs. The rainwater harvesting number was quite high, so we made some hard decisions and said, okay, well, let's carry the scope that we thought we had at PSR, and should the town want to pursue this rainwater harvesting system, we can look at all of the potential cost savings, because we've identified about 19 items that can be pulled from the project. We wouldn't recommend all of them. So this is kind of a first presentation of a draft that you all can review, take the week, 2 weeks, and we can regroup in a couple of weeks and prioritize, accept, or just say, yeah, we're actually fine not taking any of these. But I think this, since this is the first time you've seen these items, I don't think it's fair to say, okay, what do you guys want to take? So, but I will go through some of these very quickly. Let's see if I could see it a little bit better. So we organized this based on kind of areas. So the first item is site. And what we could pull, but what we don't recommend pulling, is we currently, under the parking lot, have some subsurface drainage structures. When we reviewed the potential of a porous pavement parking lot with DPW, we were asked to not include that just because of the maintenance issues, or just the ongoing maintenance. So we wanted to at least show you what that value is. If we were to pursue a porous paved parking lot, that would be a cost savings of $178,000. These are all marked up costs, meaning as our estimators estimate, they basically estimate based on direct costs. What is that material cost? What does it cost to install? But then you're going to pay the general contractor markups, right? There's insurance, there's general requirements, there's all these other markups. So that's what the markup cost means. It means it's it's your cost to eliminate this item from the scope. But currently, all these items that have red numbers next to them are included in the scope. So there's an opportunity to reduce the scope with these items. With regard to the building envelope, the exterior of the building, there are a few things that we can do. We wouldn't necessarily recommend them. We show sunshades on the south side at the windows, which are really helpful during, the noontime hours, and definitely during the warmer months. So that has a value of about $56,000. We had to price out, we just had to, at least so you'd know, the outdoor classroom that we are proposing for the second floor, the roof between the art classroom and the gym is almost $100,000. But, this was a really good, efficient way of using a roof. This is residual space based on how the program worked out on the second floor. So we think in the overall scheme of things, this is something that we would really not recommend taking. Other items are more material-oriented and visual aesthetics that, as we go into design development, you don't need to make these decisions right now. As we go into design development, we're going to take a hard look at all of these components because it's in our best interest and yours. We want to make sure you get the most bang for your money and that we're spending the town's money really responsibly. I'm going to stop because I think they're questions.
I just had a question, yeah. So again, if you eliminate something like the shades, for example, do you also look at, let's say it's 56,000. Do we look at the impact annually on how much more it would cost to heat or air condition the building? Is there some sort of analysis that's done so you can make a good decision versus just less money? Because maybe it's not less money when you look at those other things.
That's a really good point. We have not, in the week that we've kind of worked out those numbers, but we can definitely go back to our consultants and say, hey, what does this mean? We were thinking, well, when we eliminate those, the teachers are just going to pull the shades down more. So that, in effect, would kind of create a barrier for solar gain as well. But we can definitely, if some of these are being seriously considered, we would definitely look at that. Thank you.
Ms. Simon?
Thank you for that. I would love to see, what that would look like. In terms of the outdoor classroom, which I love, is that the kind of thing that could be added later? Or does it have to be
no.
Okay.
So some of these, if folks seriously want to consider, we would really need to have that decision made as we go into design development, because how we design the building, how the structure is designed is going to be impacted by this outdoor classroom.
And through the chair, I meant if we built the building without it.
Yes.
And then 10 years down the road, we decided we wanted to add it. Is that the kind of thing? It would be a lot more difficult because it's not incorporated into the original design?
It would be definitely more difficult, but if it is something you would like to consider, we would plan ahead and figure out how to make the structure work in such a way that you don't need to finish it as an outdoor classroom, but in the future, if you choose to, at least we know the structure is set at an elevation that would work.
Thank you.
And Mr. Pavianis was next, and then Dr. Conti.
Hey, Vivian. So on the, again, with the outdoor classroom, I just want to clarify the rooftop outdoor classroom runs about $100,000, but there's so much acreage around the building.
Yep.
Could the same or more outdoor learning opportunities be placed at ground level and still have the $100,000 savings or ballpark $100,000 savings?
So we do have outdoor classroom areas on the north side of the building, and there's a small pocket do you know where the existing trailhead, where the sign is, where we're rebuilding based on the bus drop-off? That area is also a small area. So there are pockets that we could enhance, but this is a pretty good size. This is about the size of a classroom. It's just slightly larger than a classroom size. So in terms of finding a 1,000 square foot space that is shaped in a way that is like a classroom, it might be a little bit more challenging. It is a large site, but there's a lot going on that site with regard to roadways and drop-offs and playground. But definitely we can find pockets to add that. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just again, I guess I should start by saying I wouldn't support value managing any student classroom space out. But I guess my comment would be, the numbers look big individually, but in the scope of the whole project, Roger, $100,000 on a $100 million project is over how many years? 20 years. Again, I know every $100,000 counts, but the mindset is I'm not sure that that would be that noticeable. I think if we add a lot of those 100,000s together and get to the gray water system that is approaching $800,000, I think that's maybe starting to move the needle. But we would need to really take out many of the red numbers to even come close to sort of impacting the overall cost. Roger, I don't want to say that without sort of your thinking. So, again, it's hard to look at these numbers and reflect on them personally, but again, they're all big numbers. But again, $100,000 over the scope of this project would be, again, we're going to bump into some adjustments that are going to be tens of thousands of dollars as we go through construction. So I guess, Madam Chair, that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, no, I think that's valid. Do we want to do, let's just have a general conversation about, I think I agree with Dr. Conte. Is the committee really wanting to make value engineering choices now? Are folks interested in some of these markups? Like maybe let's go from there and see what folks are interested in doing. Anyone else have a comment? Roger.
I would just be interested in just, for the committee's use, understanding what each of the items is.
Sure.
And then we'll come back to whether the trade-offs should happen.
Okay.
Should we go down the list? Okay. All right, so.
Sorry, Vivian. Also, when you go through this, maybe when you're giving the descriptions, it might be helpful to let people know some of these we don't need, we can make those decisions later in the project, and others we would need to know to incorporate into the design now, right? Just so as people are thinking about that.
Yeah. So the remaining, well, let's just go through it. Item 4 is we have a good amount of windows in the way of curtain wall, which are window walls. We could replace about 500 square foot of that with just solid wall masonry. The impact of that would be to reduce slightly the amount of natural daylight coming into some of these spaces. This is something that we don't necessarily have to decide because during design development, we're going to be tweaking the elevations of the building, just how it looks, the window proportions, and all that. So just by nature of developing the design, the window proportions and the amount of glass may change a little bit. But at this point, we are kind of in that sweet spot in terms of the amount of glazing to the wall ratio so that it's really efficient in terms of our energy modeling. So not something that we need to decide on immediately, but we are, again, as we look at design in the next phase, we'll be tweaking that some more. The eliminating the south-facing rooftop mechanical screen, we are set pretty far away from residential, from houses. The reason we have the screen is twofold. One is for visual, so that you don't see that really nice big piece of equipment on the roof when you're driving up. The other is that the equipment has a hum, has a noise level. Our acoustic engineers have been out with these little, I think, Melissa, you mentioned your son seeing this. They've been taking readings for ambient noise. So that's our baseline. We cannot exceed 10 decibel beyond the base decibel level. And if our equipment does exceed that, we need the acoustical panels.
So my son shouting into that microphone will set a nice high bar for us?
Yes, it will actually. Yeah, definitely. This is one that it would be great if we knew sooner rather than later, but again, what it means is that it impacts the structure on the roof. The canopy at the front of the building, so as I said earlier, the scope currently includes the more rectangular canopy that pulls out forward. If we wanted to eliminate that completely and have kind of a flat face similar to some of the earlier images we shared with you, that would be a savings of about $61,000. That one, again, I think we can make that decision during the next phase. It's not going to impact us significantly. The decorative ballasts at the low roofs. So we have a few low roofs, and what you see we typically specify a PVC roof. It is white or a light gray. In time, it gets really dirty. So when we have some low roofs and we've got windows looking out, we like to specify they're nice smooth stones that look a little bit nicer and you don't see how dirty the roof gets. Very much aesthetic, something that we can totally eliminate because it's kind of it's us being architects. So that is also something that you do not need to decide today, or even not until into the design development phase. So a lot of these that are aesthetic these decisions do not need to be made immediately. They can be something that we continue to discuss during the next phase of design. The next few items are the building interior items. So we have in many of our images shared with you the interior views of the lobbies. We have shared them as glass railing systems. Really great in that you're able to see through them. The kids have great views through. We could save a little bit of money by going to our typical stainless steel mesh. This is something that we should decide sooner rather than later, because as we go into design development, we're going to want to design the stairs to really be one way or the other, because the visual is one thing, but how we detail it is another. So I would say this one we should decide sooner rather than later. And Neil, feel free to chime in as well. And you too, Dr. Conti. Operable partition at the cafetorium platform. Currently, we are carrying an operable partition, not like the ones that are currently at Fox Hill. These are acoustically rated. This would sit on the front, right over the stairs, and what it does is when it's closed, creates a whole separate teaching space. So this can be used for instrumental music, which is what we had discussed as we were working on our programming with the staff and with Dr. Conti. So I would say, again, this can be decided sometime during design development. This will impact structure. So the sooner the better, but again, I don't think we need to make this decision right now as well.
Vivian, we got a question. Bob's going to read it.
Yeah, I just want to read. So this is from John Denizio. He's having some technical issues right now, but basically he's asking for all these VE items if we can get a list that are decisions that, let me read it, sorry. Items that need to be decided before submission and what is normally done as you work through the design process from SD to DD.
Yeah.
So.
I think that's really fair. So maybe what we do is, after this meeting, we'll take this list and identify those few that really should be decided on before we start the DD process. Some of these, all of these are included in the base scope, and depending on which cost estimate, which project budget we proceed with for the MSBA submission, we don't need to take any of these to meet the budget if the project budget is at 100 million or less. But if it's...
If I could also just interject. So MSBA also wants us to continue to carry this value management list. If some of them will come off because we do need to know, are we including them or not including them at this phase? Other items that don't need a decision today, and we can continue to further refine the design during design development. We're going to continue to carry this list, right? So, and a lot of these items, as Vivian's been saying, are aesthetic, and we'll work through with you to define value management. Is it worth, so much money, $36,000, to have a more durable material that will last you, much longer than, JIP or something. But we will continue to carry those items that we can going into design development. So we're not saying all or nothing either.
Just so I understand perfectly, all of these potential project cost savings with the red dollar amount are already included in the project.
Yes.
So all we're considering on this list is taking them out to lower the cost.
Correct.
Okay, and then down below in the blue, if we were to leave everything in that has a red and we wanted to add anything from the blue, that would simply put the price up higher.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we all were on the same page.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for clarifying that. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, I know that there was kind of a question about helping us prioritize. As I don't know if, were you going to color code it or put columns or like, red, yellow, green? Like, green, you can wait longer, yellow, and red is need to know now.
I would say most of these do not need to be decided on. I would say the outdoor classroom, because it's going to be impacting the structural design, but we had also hidden a column for what we would recommend, and if you add everything in that we recommend, it's in the $750,000 range. And the outdoor classroom was not in the list of what we recommended taking. So I would say anything that impacts the structure significantly, that one is probably the only one. Even the canopies, that's something that we're going to continue to look at. Yeah.
Go ahead, Eric.
So I think refining the list makes a lot of sense. I just was asking Neil, we come up with a number that's, again, I think this is a good news story, right? So what we estimated, the numbers come in. We are going to go to town meeting with this number. If town meeting funds the project, then we further refine the plans, and then we put the plans out to bid. What makes this real is when a contractor says, I can build the building for this dollar amount. That may not match, even though the estimators matched. So let's say the contractor comes in $250,000 over what the town has given us. We either need to go back and ask for the additional money, or at that point, we need to revisit this list now. So I guess one of my concerns is we're on budget now. If we eliminate all of these things now, then we would need to eliminate future things. I'm assuming the list would stay the same once we have a construction price. Is that true? So we're going to have to value manage this several times? I
No.
just want to make sure I'm clear and not...
So if I may, through the chair, we will have 3 more cost estimates during the course of design. So this estimate is to set the scope for project funding for the MSBA. At the end of design development, we will have a similar list, and at that point, what we would design to is what we've agreed to for the scope at schematic design. If you choose to take any of these value engineering or potential cost savings now, we would design to that at design development. We plan to take a really hard look at the site to see how we could actually pull back on some of the soils that are being removed. So there are going to be opportunities during the next phase to save more money. At that point, at that cost estimate, we will have a similar list. Whether these items are on it maybe during the course of design, some of these decisions may be made. It could be a trade-off. Do we need tile here? Maybe we reduce it here. This is here so that if you feel strongly, say, that you want to take the rainwater harvesting item, this would offset that. But that's a big chunk, and there's a lot of items that you would have to do without to meet that. So yes, if you make the decision now to take any of these value engineering items, we would design in such a way at the next phase that would eliminate them. Does that sort of?
And if I could add, though, I think that's kind of the detail that we're going to have 3 more. We're still going to have 3 more estimates, and as we get closer to the date of bidding, right? We'll make sure that we've taken into consideration market conditions at that time. We also, just for everyone's information, we're carrying a design contingency. The building has not been fully designed. We also have escalation built in. So we have contingencies built in. But more to Dr. Conti's point is we're going to go through all of this, and really all that matters is bid day, right? And I think that's what he was saying. So if at bid day, the bids come in over, and depending on how much they come over, if it's $200,000, we have money in design, we have money in construction contingency that we can even just take. We're carrying 3% for construction contingency, right? So we can even use some of that to offset some of the costs if there's an overage. I don't even really want to talk about it because it's, you know, we're so careful and cautious, and we never take the low bid. We always take the third bid. But in any event, if it does come over, as it has, I think it was 22 that the market just went crazy, right? So we have opportunities to maybe address if the market conditions really shift drastically and we weren't able to get in front of it.
Right, and
so I don't know if that helps you, because I think ultimately, if the bid comes in over, and this is a hard bid, so if the bid comes in over, and the town chooses to either supplement the cost either through construction contingency or other methods, then we have two options. We can reject it, and then we can make modifications to the bid documents to reduce the scope and then go out and rebid it and hope that we come in on budget. Or we say, okay, well, we don't have a project. I don't think anyone will get there, but that's also a path to dealing with that. So to answer your question, I think, Eric, does that help answer your question? Because I think that was ultimately your question.
Yes. Again, I know we have some contingency. I just think we're going to need, I think the story here is that our estimators matched what our sort of initial work did essentially, so we're in a great spot. Value managing sort of, or having us value manage down like tightly now doesn't really make sense until we have some construction, the real cost in, is, I guess, was my thinking, but obviously the group has to make that decision. That's, I guess that's what I was saying. I'm not sure tonight's the night for us to spend a lot of time arguing over a $30,000 something or other, because we still have a long way to go. I just think if someone really has a burning desire for a gray water system, that's a pretty big adjustment that we should probably talk about, because that's an $800,000 add at this point. And so, and I think you guys were nice to show us a pathway of getting there that's cost neutral. But again, I will stop talking. My vote would not be to give up some of the things you're asking us to give up for that $800,000 unless there's a huge reimbursement difference or some other way. But I think your notes say there's really no reimbursement benefit for doing that. And so that's, again, I need to stop.
Are not reimbursable by MSBA. So to your point, the rain harvesting system would be 100% borne by the town. And there's no IRA incentive like the ground source heat pumps or the Mass Save that would help us offset any of that cost.
So I just wanted to ask, well, I guess either of you, Bob, Eric, don't we have that rainwater harvesting system at Memorial? And is it a serious value added? I mean, it doesn't seem, it's not something that I, how do I put it? the concept of it doesn't really, I don't like it all that well. But I mean, I have no problem with it. It's just not something I'm seeking out. But I wonder how it works at Memorial, and are you glad we have it? Is it worth the money? Does it save us anything?
Again, through the chair, so I'll comment on that. We've had some up and downs with the current system that we have. Currently, it's up. I think a lot of it depends on nature and how much rain comes in. So it's tough to really make a full judgment call as to my value. Do I think it's great? Sure. Do I think it's necessity? No. The system is designed to fail over to the town's regular water system as needed, or if the supply is low. So again, depending on nature is really going to dictate how often we can use that. So does it bring value? Yes. Is it necessarily? No, in my opinion.
I think everyone knows here that I'm not a big fan of spending extra money, but the only question I have is on the ERVs, we did say there's less ductwork. It adds, the second air handler. Does it, in your opinion, Dr. Conti, Bob, having the second air handler, does it provide benefit for us if something goes down? Like, what's the pro cons to this, adding that? Because that's really the only adder I'm even slightly considering. The Mike 1 adder in the middle.
I can speak to that, yes. Jeremy, I think the main reason we thought about it because we thought we would reduce the amount of ductwork, but it actually didn't reduce it very much. The greatest savings is that you have an ERV that's in the admin area that you can control independently in the summertime. That's the biggest advantage.
I don't know if that's a 100K trade-off.
Meaning like 2 zones like in your house?
You could have one off,
Yeah,
and
okay,
you could have
so-
one on.
Yeah, okay.
However, with controls, you could tamp down the one larger one. So when we pushed our engineer about it and said, okay, does this really make sense? I think in the long run, we could make both work. We thought this would be a more efficient system just because you could actually have one off.
And I assume this is a decision we have to make at this point, or no?
Ideally, before DD starts would be helpful because it'll impact the mechanical system a bit.
Okay.
It could be changed later, though. I don't think it's a deal breaker to switch it later. It's just one unit.
Yeah. Oh.
I guess at some point, if we
Jerry.
included that, though, there'd be a CDR somewhere that we could cut it out if we needed to pull back, right? So you're going to, if we were to do the adder for that ERV, there's still some sort of review we're going to go through that we can pull it back out if we need to, because we find out, hey, the 100K isn't worth it, or 75K, whatever it winds up being. Yeah.
Sooner the better, because we'll start to coordinate piping and ductwork and stuff. It gets hard to go
Ms.
backwards.
Simon? and then-
I don't have a specific opinion on this, but again, I think it's important for us to think about efficiency, which doesn't show up exactly in these numbers, although you certainly referenced it and you're thinking about it. We know that we're going to be having hotter days. We know we're going to have, and if there's something that's more efficient, I think it gives it more value, in my opinion. And, being able to manage different zones, whatever. So I don't have an opinion right now, but I think that's something that we should be considering for all of these items. I also wanted to comment on the rainwater harvesting because I was disappointed to see how much it would cost to include that. It's a lot of money. And yet, as Mr. Kunis, as Bob said, that it's dependent on nature. And, lately it's been raining, but if it isn't raining a lot, then does that allow us to, does it help the town? We're going on, onto the WMRA, not the WMRA, the MWRA, water is, and that's going to keep getting more expensive. So in the long run, if this is a 50 to 75-year-old building, is that going to save us money on water costs? I just think that when we can look at the long-term efficiency, as Catherine said earlier, the long-term efficiency is also an impact which isn't shown completely in these numbers, but I think when we look at which items we might want to value manage out or in, that's for me a top priority. And then I have one question. There's a few of these that say we could use acoustic tile or some kind of tile. So when I read it at first, I thought it was like shiny tile that's pottery, and so you could, not pottery, ceramic, so you could wash it more easily and it's easier to maintain and whatever. So could you actually explain what those tile replacements are and how, is it just aesthetically looks different and the maintenance is the same and that kind of thing? So.
Yes. So acoustic tiles are what you see here on the ceiling. What we had drawn in some areas is what's called a wood looks, but it's an aluminum panel ceiling that is also we call this an accessible ceiling, which a lot of facilities folks love because you can pop them up, you can access equipment, you can change out filters, et cetera, without having access panels. We currently have drawn on the project areas a drywall ceiling, which is what is on the wall. That's a drywall, which would require access panels. It's a little bit of a cleaner look. It's smooth, and it's painted. So there's no washing or cleaning necessary for either one of these ceilings. It's more of aesthetics as well as maintenance. Ease of maintenance. So we thought it was actually a pretty easy swap out if we were to just go with a acoustic tile ceiling in many of these areas where we have drywall. And it was a good cost savings to swap out some of these wood looks, which is, again, an aluminum ceiling, similar to this, but aluminum, that has a wood look to it. So it looks like a wood ceiling.
If I could follow up. I agree with what you're saying, that it might be a way to save money and it's more pretty perhaps, but my priority is not necessarily to make the ceiling look more pretty, but to keep items that help preserve a natural daylight. The daylighting, I think, my value is that the daylighting is a higher priority than whether we have acoustic tiles or a wood look. And I don't know what other people think, but I'd like people to consider that. There are other ones where it's not just about the aesthetics, but also about accessing daylight. Because when I went to visit new buildings in the last year or two, I think that's one of the most, it's valuable aesthetically, and also the research shows that the daylighting is an important thing, and that also helps to save energy and that kind of thing. Thank you.
Just one comment. We were kind of getting into the weeds of all the different items on the page and what they include, but I wanted to circle back on Dr. Connie's comment about estimates versus bids. And again, to kind of bring it full circle, a lot of what we're talking about and presenting tonight is about tolerance for risk and where we were and where we are today and what we have within our control to adjust one way or the other. And as Vivian mentioned, we have 3 more estimates. We will do a very similar process where we reconcile, we talk about VE/value management. Also, as Donna mentioned, a lot of this list will continue to be moved forward unless it's something that we absolutely need to take now. So the work has already been done. The brainstorming has started to begin on what might be available to us in both directions. But as the process goes on, the design gets more refined, we'll have more opportunities, or at least more options of different types to present to you as the design gets more detailed. And the contingencies are all kind of how we're managing risk right now. The bid market, the escalation, and just pricing contingency. So that's how we're managing risk right now, and we'll continue that through the design estimate process. The closer we get to bid date, and when bid date comes, often a strategy is to include bid alternates. And sometimes that is, a bid alternate can be something that was on the value engineering log or has been part of the discussion. And that's a strategy that it allows you to bid the base building, but it allows you to provide options for the contractor to price so that should things be a little less fortunate on bid day and something in the market has changed and we need to find $200,000 versus increasing the project budget, that's there as an option. As long as it's within the town's budget in either direction, that you can elect to take those. And so that's how it's managed on bid date. Because as much as the estimators have their finger on the pulse of the public construction market, local, like very local to Massachusetts and MSBA schools, things happen and can happen quickly, you know, if it's a pandemic or somewhere in between. So that's just how we're managing risk today and what happens on bid date so that we don't just have to, you know, mothball everything and go back to the drawing board, so to speak. So there's just kind of bringing that full circle on where we are now and what that'll look like when we get close to bid date. Yeah, and so again, coming full circle is, you know, the designer has a contractual obligation to design to your budget. And we know what the budget was at PSR. It's also our obligation to give you pathways based on your needs and wants. And we think, as Dr. Connie mentioned, you know, we got you there as one possibility. But I think, again, more to his point, is if there's a real burning desire for some of these adds or minuses now, you don't need to, but if there is, we need to know about them now because those can potentially be big enough swings that we need to do some more homework over the next couple of weeks to get you another path, if it's not already on the page.
Back to managing risk a little bit. I noticed between PSR and SD, the what's it called? The contingency was lowered on the construction side from 5% to 3.5%. Can you briefly describe what's the rationale for that or the conditions which make that possible?
So if you look at the values on the table, it shows a reduction in the construction contingency. At PSR, we were carrying 5% of the construction cost. That contingency is outside of the construction budget, so that's one of the owner's contingencies, but it's outside of the construction number. So it's nothing that's been earmarked for anything right now. It's one of those abilities to manage risk that's errors and omissions in design and just, you know, in the public bidding statute, there's opportunities for things to just be missed in terms of the bid. There's unknowns. We start digging and we find something in the ground, an old storage tank that wasn't on any drawings or documented anywhere. That's the one place that the owner has to manage those types of risk. At PSR, we were carrying 5%, and we both made an adjustment and agreed to the adjustment to turn that down to 3.5%, which is a very common industry standard for a new construction building. If this was renovation, when we were looking at all those options during PDP, if it was a heavy renovation and we're opening up a lot of walls, we need to connect to existing mechanical systems and plumbing system, that would certainly be much higher than 3.5%, somewhere maybe between starting at 5% and kind of adjusting from there depending on risk tolerance. But that was one of the big changes from PSR as well.
All right, thanks. So the list of unknowns is smaller than it was before. Thanks.
also recognizing that's money that they're not going to participate in if you exceed, I think it's 1%, right, Steve?
So when the MSBA calculates your theoretical maximum reimbursement for a grant amount, they only take 1% of that number as a potentially. And so it's very common, you know, at DD, or even once we get into construction documents, if we're in a similar situation and we don't really feel like there's anything specific to adjust, we could make a recommendation to adjust that to 3.2, right? That's just one of the knobs you have to turn. And some people, depending on what's on the table at that time, might be uncomfortable with it, or it might be the easiest decision to make.
Are folks here interested in making value management decisions, or is anyone passionate about adding or removing something at this point in time? I'm seeing a lot of heads shaking. No. Okay, I'm in agreement there. I don't believe we need a vote. Vivian?
If there are any items on this list that anyone would like to take off the list, we are happy to do that as well, as something that we should not consider at this point, such as the rooftop classroom. Or we could just leave it.
That is the only direct learning impact, right? Eric, I know you feel passionate about that.
Yeah, only one vote.
Ms. Monaco?
Unless there's some item in that reduction part that someone feels really strongly about, I agree with Dr. Conte. I think we should leave it alone. I don't see anything on there that I'm in a hurry to take off. And then you have a totally different question when you look at the bottom 3 add-ons. And again, I'm comfortable leaving them alone at this moment. But I only say this to kind of get the ball rolling. If someone feels strongly, they should speak up.
Ms. Simon?
How was I going to say it? I'm thinking again about I don't know that it adds up to a lot. Oh, I know what I want to ask. The question I asked earlier about the ceiling wood look versus acoustic tile, is that the kind of thing we can decide later? Okay, I thought so, but I wanted to ask.
I personally would love to revisit the canopy. I know you said you're looking at it. I don't think we need the Taj Mahal canopy, but maybe we get slightly bigger than the one there. But I think you sounds like we can talk about that, and that feels like it's well within some wiggle room. Okay. Ms. Priest?
I was going to ask the same question if there was a in between the two option. I feel like the one that's pictured might not be big enough, but the large one, as nice as it is, the price isn't really going side by side with the amount of coverage the kids are going to get from it.
Yeah, I would love if you get out of your car to the building undercover, right? Like that would potentially be, but it doesn't need to extend all the way to the left, you know. But again, it sounds like this could be a longer conversation.
I have a question or a comment to make. I think the canopy extending to the left is important because you have vans dropping students off, and most of the kids who are riding in vans are receiving special education services, have sensory needs. You know, they don't want to be wet when they get out of the car, just like any other student doesn't want to get wet when they get out of the car. So I think if we're looking at the canopy, we need to make sure that we're covering both sides. Thanks.
I should probably move this on, but generally, I think any of the items that impact sort of environmental inside the building, so light, acoustics, general environmental conditions that help kids study better. I definitely would not cut any of those.
Madam Chair, just hypothetically, if we were to add $300,000 to the project cost, that would cover all canopy contingencies from wicked big to wicked small? Yeah? And again, I'm still thinking that's in the negligible amount, and we still have to get construction bids that may in fact come in under the 300,000, or if they come in over, then we could change our canopy option at that time. We could design it as an alternate. So, Madam Chair, I guess if people want some canopy options, then maybe we can add that in as an alternate to see what the impact on bidding would be. Again, I'm sorry, none of this is real to me until I have a company that says, I'm going to build it for this amount. And again, I think we hit the number we needed to hit. So this was a really good night for everyone, again, that the PSR matched. So again, thank you all for the estimates and the work. So I have some colleagues who, from PSR to this phase, needed to cut $10 million from the project, and that's not a nice place to be. So we're in a good place. And again, my suggestion is if we could add the 300,000 roughly as a bid alternate, then that would give us some wiggle room, understanding that it may need to come out at a future date.
Right, do you want to show these? I don't think we need to go through the visuals at this point.
No, I wanted to kind of wrestle to the ground the canopy alternate. So I think what I heard was to include flexibility to get that done within the project budget, but have the option to remove it if we're not so great on bid date, which is entirely possible. But as it stands, it's not in, right, Vivian?
Correct, just the smaller.
So I think, again, depending on risk tolerance and the couple of paths, the generator option, I think our recommendation as the path is not accepting any value management, get you to where the design wants and needs are included. So we're not suggesting anything to change anything there. But if we were to include that add for the canopy, to include the flexibility, is that an increase to the project budget? Or should we look for ways to manage the contingencies down? So it includes it, recognizing that if we're in trouble, we can take that out as an alternate and maintain the contingency where it needs to be. And it doesn't have to be a vote necessarily tonight. What we can do is we can put that into the Excel math and show you what it looks like so that it's more definitive in terms of what the bottom line is, what the potential reimbursement would be, so you're not wishy-washy on what that commitment is tonight.
Ms. Simon?
Also, for clarification, this slide here is titled Preliminary Massing and Materials. Is that what you're calling the minimal canopy, or is that no canopy?
That's the zero canopy.
Yeah, that's zero canopy.
Canopy study 1.
Okay, so canopy study 1 is on the top of the slide.
That's the big
and
one.
that's
mega big
canopy
one.
slot.
Yes, and then if you go
study
to the
one.
next one.
And then canopy study 2 is the rectangular
This is
one.
included already.
And
This
this
canopy.
is the one that is included?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. So if we were to go from this one to study one,
yeah.
it's a $270,000
That's
add.
$270,000. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Ms. Priest, yeah.
Just to clarify, what I was thinking was more along the lines of, we discussed how the current canopy is skinny, like the one above, that's the additional cost. And if there was a way to make the option 2 maybe slightly larger so it covered a little more of the students, so that they were out of the weather equal opportunity, everybody gets to get a little wet on their way in or snowed on. And I know it's a balance with trying not to block windows and natural light and all that stuff, but that's more of what I was thinking about. It wasn't that one side would get it and not the other. It was more of, can we bump that out forward a little more, to the sides a little more, to give a little more coverage without going for the $270,000 route.
If I could, through the chair? So definitely at the next design phase, we could look at something that's an in-between. And that's something that we don't need to make that decision today.
Even the design of the canopy.
Even the design of the canopy is going to change. This is, at schematic design, it's very preliminary. Again, we keep saying scope, scope, scope. We just want to carry the scope. We know that this building is not going to look like this at the end of the next phase or even at the end of the following phase, but it's all going to continue to evolve, and components such as this they're going to be studied further, and we're going to look at what makes the most amount of sense to provide as much coverage as possible. There are many ways to kind of work on that, and that's what we'll be doing at the next phase.
This is a question for Vivian. If I were building a house and I wanted a front porch, the depth of the porch would dictate how much sun I lose in the first floor windows. So if you look at this large canopy, could you, like, maybe not this minute, but as we talk about canopies, I hate to lose a lot of the sunlight and the natural light in those first floor windows because of the canopy. And I don't know how to wrestle with that, but I think you do.
Yes. So we have a program that allows us to model daylight, and we could study what the spaces look like inside during different times of the day and whether there is a canopy in front or not. So we can definitely do that at the next phase as part of that whole study. Yeah.
I wouldn't want to lose a lot of light.
No. The one thing going for it is that it is set forward from the building by at least 20 feet, so it will allow a good amount of light through. Exactly. When the canopy is attached to the building, that's when you really lose that. And then you also, the kids lose that ability to look straight up from the window and see the sky. Yeah.
Ms. Hines.
Again, just for clarification, if you go a few slides down, you get the front-on view, and the rectangular one is called Study 2 in this, and the long one is called Study 1. So is that, am I correct, that's reverse of the first two slides?
No.
Okay, never mind then, doesn't matter.
One is the long one.
All right, so we are not making any value management choices at this phase. We're going to continue to work on incorporating a canopy at some point, be it potentially out of contingency, or we'll look at the prices.
Design,
Yep,
yeah.
during design. Okay. Anyone object to that path forward? Awesome. All right. Next section. Oh, sorry.
Sorry. I was thinking about it as you said it. So you're saying you want to carry that out of contingency if we add that 300K?
Well, I think she's going to look at other canopy options, so maybe we get a less expensive or a slightly, yeah, we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm really in favor of burning down contingency on canopies.
Go ahead.
So at the next design phase, we'll have an opportunity to price this again, and at that point, it could be a value engineering item. So again, a decision doesn't need to be made right now.
All right. Bob, I think next is just upcoming meetings. All right. So our next meeting in general is the community meeting, Wednesday, June 12th, 7. It's WebEx only. I repeat for anyone still listening, Wednesday, June 12th, 7 p.m. It's going to be recorded, BCAT, whole 9 yards. So I think a lot of the numbers that you saw today will be put out there. Vivian walked us through the presentation earlier in the week. All things that this group has already seen, put packaged together for the community, and then we can get that on the website. So also, that'll be a resource going forward. The 17th is just a internal Dorn Whittier deadline, correct? Yeah, yes.
Yep, that's the date that we have committed to get a draft of the schematic design package uploaded for folks to browse, prepare questions, so that when we arrive for the night of the June 25th, we have all those answers for you.
Okay. And we do not need the June 18th. Everyone can have that back.
Well, I wanted to be more specific about the project budget in the conversation earlier, and getting it back to the first couple of slides. So I didn't want to leave tonight and miss the opportunity to be very clear about it. So we are making a recommendation that it's probably the responsible thing to do to carry a natural gas generator in the project in case we have no path forward to get to a diesel generator. If that changes, we've allowed for that flexibility that we can pivot in one way, but the reverse wouldn't necessarily be true, especially in terms of the MSBA. So we're at the PSR budget of $99,999,707. We've got two different approaches depending on your risk tolerance of the lower range of 99,367 with a gas generator using AMF's estimate, or the blended approach with a little more risk tolerance or flexibility to deal with some unknowns of $100,042,256. And before we decide on whether we're going to forego the next potentially optional meeting, I wanted to make sure that if their request was to provide a pathway to include the increased canopy size within the project budget, I would like the opportunity to model that to show you what that increase would be based on those two numbers I just mentioned, because that is currently not in those numbers. And there's a couple of paths forward. There was to include it and adjust contingencies down further to kind of make that judgment if folks are okay with that. And the other option would just be to increase it by that same amount and carry the same contingencies so we know. So I think that's the decision that's in front of us tonight that we don't necessarily have to make tonight, if there's that more information that we can prepare for you to make that more clear. So the first, if that's truly what we want to see, is to see what that is in the budget. Again, there's still the option at a later date to take it out, but if we want to see that scope owned in the budget now, we would need to add it and either adjust contingencies or increase the project budget.
Does anyone have a preference? Oh, Roger.
I heard a lot of enthusiasm for a good practical canopy system, so it seems like the path to that is to put it in the budget.
Okay. So we would carry your recommendation is the far right, bottom right number, right, Steve?
The blended.
The 140, no, this is gas. This is the most conservative of our current estimates, correct? Okay.
Yep.
Should someone make a motion?
I make a motion that we add the roughly $300,000 into the blended estimate to put canopy options into the base price with a gas generator model.
Any questions, discussions on this? All right, Mrs. Bond? Aye. Ms. Monaco?
Yes.
My pen is dead. Ms. Nevoychuk?
Yes.
Mr. Brooks?
Nope.
Dr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Kasha? Do we lose her? Mr. Cuna?
Yes.
I think we lost Mr. Sagarino, right?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Sagarino, are you there? No. Mr. Denizio? No. No. Mr. Valano?
Yes.
Ms. Priest? Aye. I vote aye, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to 2. All right, so that's the 1,042,000 with the additional canopy budget in there, and that's what we will carry into the SD approval, which it's going to go up. It's that 100, the bottom right, 100,042,000, so it'd be 4,342. Dr. Conti.
It's a very quick question. So let's say we add $300,000 to the bottom line of the blended rate. If things work out with planning board and we get a diesel generator, then what we're saying is basically 2/3 of that, we're going to, 190,000, according to the estimate, would get added back in and essentially pay for 2/3 of the canopy. Is that's going
Correct.
to be
My
the
understanding.
horse trading that is going to
Yep.
happen at a later date? Okay.
And if the incentives are true and you recover the incentive
$1 million,
available through Mass Save,
yeah.
it's another 1.4 million for the good.
Okay. So if we go back to the slide, I don't have 21, Bob. So that number will be reflected at the June 20, so those documents that we will receive on the 17th, that number will be reflected to review, and then this body will meet at 6 p.m. on the 25th prior to the school committee meeting to submit the SD. Schematic design. Any questions, comments here? Okay. Placeholder has been removed. Andrea, you deleted, or whoever sent it? Okay. All right. And then.
So we'll model that change.
Yep.
Right, there's some very minor changes in the overall budget sheet it's tens or hundreds, not hundreds of thousands to millions, so
Yep.
it's not going to move the needle much, but in full transparency, we will model that, reflect it, and upload that well in advance so people have it to ask questions or if they need to understand it more deeply.
Can we get that by Wednesday so Roger can have the accurate tax dollar amount?
We can
Okay.
probably have it by tomorrow.
Okay. All right. And Roger will have a tax, the average tax once he gets you that exact number, so we can display that at the community meeting. Okay. Okay. And we'll get that to Vivian.
And so the vote on the 25th will be one, to memorialize the updated budget, part one, and part two would be to submit that along with the rest of the SD submittal to the MSBA.
Ms. Priest.
Just for clarification, the tax pricing that Roger and the Ways and Means are working on is not including the potential funds from Mass Save and those other programs, correct?
The original modeling shared at the community meeting back in December included
Those reimbursements?
those
Okay.
reimbursements and incentives, yeah.
Just be a reminder that town meeting has to authorize the entire amount in advance.
Yes.
but
just
with
wanted
the
to-
expectation that there will be rebates, but the authorization is for the total amount.
But you're calculating the tax on that 61 million, right? Bob,
Yeah, it showed that based on the after grants and incentives amount.
okay.
Yep.
Yes, okay.
And because folks are curious, and to Dr. Connie's comments, there's some assumptions that might prove to be true that would be for the good. So we won't make a decision and count on those, but we can model what that might be in the end as well. So it won't be part of the vote to submit, but it might be helpful for folks to see if things work out really well, how that'll continue to improve the number.
Okay. Yeah, so the tax calculation, Roger, is on that 61 it'll be 61,502, something like that.
It'll still be yes, but it will still be an estimate pending the acceptance by the MSBA and the
Correct,
signing
correct,
of the
correct.
funding agreement, in which will actually settle all the numbers
Agreed, yes.
to the bottom line.
Yep. All right, any other topics for tonight? No? Okay. Any additional public comments? Anybody online, Bob? No? All right. Do I
Motion to
have
adjourn.
a motion? Oh, go ahead. A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
Boys last.